The summary of Getting to Yes, brought to you by Click-Through College. Getting to Yes, Negotiating Agreement Without Giving In, is a seminal work by Roger Fisher, William Ury, and Bruce Patton of the Harvard Negotiation Project. This landmark book, published in 1981, offers a step-by-step approach to conducting successful negotiations with integrity and mutual respect. Moving beyond traditional bargaining practices that often lead to unsatisfactory outcomes, the authors introduced the concept of principled negotiation. This approach, based on 4 fundamental principles, encourages parties to focus on interests rather than positions, develop options for mutual gain, use objective criteria, and separate people from the problem. The book provides invaluable insights into how to navigate power dynamics, handle parties that resist principled negotiation, and respond to underhanded tactics. Fisher, Ury, and Patton's methodology transforms negotiation from an adversarial battle into a collaborative problem-solving process, emphasizing mutual gain and fair outcomes. The strategies outlined in this book are universally applicable, beneficial for anyone involved in negotiations, whether in business, international diplomacy, or everyday life. Chapter 1: The Problem. In the opening chapter, the authors critique traditional negotiation strategies, focusing on the flaws of positional bargaining. They emphasize how positional bargaining, where parties firmly adhere to their stance and attempt to outlast each other, frequently leads to inefficiencies and problematic outcomes. This method often fosters adversarial relationships, as parties perceive the negotiation as a zero-sum game. One's gain is the other's loss. Furthermore, positional bargaining tends to compromise the quality of the agreement, as it encourages stubbornness over reasoned decision-making. It can also be time-consuming and economically inefficient, as discussions often spiral into repetitive argument loops rather than progressing towards resolution. The authors use this analysis of the issues associated with positional bargaining to set the stage for their proposed method of principled negotiation. Chapter 2: The Method. In this chapter, the authors introduce principled negotiation as a solution to the problems associated with positional bargaining. Principled negotiation is presented as a systematic approach that encourages collaborative problem-solving over adversarial confrontation. This method focuses on 4 key principles: separate the people from the problem, focus on interests, not positions, invent options for mutual gain, and insist on using objective criteria. According to the authors, this approach promotes understanding and mutual respect between the negotiating parties, reduces the chance of deadlock, and leads to more advantageous outcomes for all involved. By concentrating on mutual interests, parties can explore creative solutions that benefit everyone, rather than feeling compelled to sacrifice their own interests for the sake of agreement. This collaborative approach also helps preserve and enhance relationships between negotiating parties, which is particularly vital in long-term dealings. Chapter 3: Separate the people from the problem. In the 3rd chapter, the authors delve deeper into the first principle of principled negotiation: separating people from the problem. They assert that in any negotiation, emotions, perceptions, and communication can heavily influence the process and outcome. Misunderstandings and misinterpretations can lead to disagreement and deadlock, while negative emotions can damage the relationship between parties. To mitigate these issues, the authors recommend empathetic listening, expressing one's own feelings and viewpoints clearly, and demonstrating appreciation of the other party's perspective. By doing so, parties can gain a better understanding of each other's values and interests, helping them to address the real issues at stake rather than getting entangled in personal disputes or preconceptions. The authors illustrate that by separating the people from the problem, negotiators can navigate interpersonal issues effectively and stay focused on reaching a mutually beneficial agreement. Chapter 4: Focus on interests, not positions. Chapter 4 takes an in-depth look at the second principle of principled negotiation: focusing on interests, not positions. In many negotiations, parties become attached to their stated positions, inhibiting productive dialogue and leading to impasse. The authors propose a shift away from these entrenched positions and towards understanding the underlying interests of all parties involved. Interests encompass the needs, desires, concerns, and fears that motivate each party's positions. By identifying and addressing these interests, parties can explore a broader range of potential solutions and arrive at an agreement that satisfies everyone. The authors emphasize that transparent communication is key to this process. By openly discussing interests and concerns, parties can better understand each other's motivations and work together to find common ground. The authors provide numerous practical strategies for uncovering interests, such as asking why and why not questions, and considering both parties' basic human needs. Chapter 5. Invent options for mutual gain. The fifth chapter delves into the third principle of principled negotiation, inventing options for mutual gain. The authors argue that successful negotiation requires creative problem-solving. Instead of viewing negotiations as a battle over a fixed pie, parties should strive to expand the pie by brainstorming options that can satisfy the interests of all involved. The authors offer practical strategies to stimulate creativity during negotiations, such as using what-if scenarios, seeking external input, and changing the physical environment. They also highlight the importance of distinguishing the invention stage from the evaluation stage, arguing that judgment should be temporarily suspended while ideas are being generated. This can help ensure that all possible options are considered before decisions are made. Finally, the authors stress the importance of collaboration in this process, urging parties to work together to invent options for mutual gain. Chapter 6. Insist on using objective criteria. Chapter 6 explores the fourth principle of principled negotiation, insisting on using objective criteria. The authors highlight the pitfalls of basing decisions on subjective preferences or power dynamics, and suggest that parties should instead strive to use fair standards and procedures when making decisions. This can help ensure that the agreement is equitable and mutually beneficial. The authors suggest several strategies for identifying and applying objective criteria, such as resorting to market values, scientific judgments, professional standards, or legal precedents. They also recommend that both parties should agree on the criteria in advance and commit to adhering to them. By grounding the negotiation process in objective criteria, parties can protect themselves against bias, arbitrariness, and coercion, thereby fostering a fairer, more cooperative negotiation environment. Chapter 7. What if they are more powerful? In this chapter, the authors tackle power imbalances in negotiations. They acknowledge that sometimes one party may have more power due to resources, authority, or other factors. However, they argue that the less powerful party is not necessarily at a disadvantage. The key, they suggest, is to develop a strong, best alternative to a negotiated agreement, BATNA. A BATNA is your fallback plan if negotiations fail. By identifying and strengthening their BATNA, negotiators can increase their bargaining power and protect themselves from accepting unfavorable terms. A strong BATNA provides a baseline, enabling the negotiator to reject offers that fall short and propose terms that align better with their interests. The authors provide a practical approach to improving one's BATNA, which includes brainstorming all available options, refining promising ones, and calculating the expected value. Chapter 8. What if they won't play? Chapter 8 addresses the issue of a party resisting the principles of negotiation. This could manifest as refusal to recognize interests, reluctance to generate options, or disagreement on the objective criteria. The authors suggest a range of strategies for dealing with such situations, including reframing, changing the negotiation environment, or introducing a third-party mediator. One powerful tool the authors recommend is the negotiation jujitsu, which involves redirecting the other party's obstructive energy back onto the problem. Instead of opposing their resistance, a negotiator can use questions or statements to bring the focus back to the interests, options, and standards at play. By using these strategies, negotiators can steer the process back towards principled negotiation, even when faced with resistance or hostility. Chapter 9. What if they use dirty tricks? The final chapter equips readers with strategies to deal with deceit or unethical behavior in negotiations. The authors suggest that such tactics often arise out of positional bargaining or a desire for personal gain. They advise that the best response to dirty tricks is to expose them, then redirect the conversation to a discussion about fairness and acceptable conduct. The authors also advocate for negotiation jujitsu in these situations. Rather than responding in kind to unethical tactics, negotiators can redirect the conversation towards the problem. In extreme cases, they recommend using a break, escalation, or even a third-party intervention. The key is to respond to the problem rather than the tactic, thereby keeping the negotiation process principled and focused on the desired outcomes. Getting to yes. Negotiating agreement without giving in offers a paradigm shift in the way we approach negotiations. Instead of viewing negotiations as battles to be won or lost, Fisher, Urey, and Patton present them as opportunities for problem-solving, collaboration, and mutual gain. Their principled negotiation approach encourages us to separate people from problems, focus on interests rather than positions, invent options for mutual gain, and insist on using objective criteria. This method not only facilitates more productive negotiations, but also promotes healthier, more respectful relationships between parties. The book also provides practical strategies for managing power imbalances, dealing with uncooperative parties, and responding to unethical tactics. While these strategies require patience, empathy, and creativity, they pay dividends in the form of fairer, more satisfying outcomes. Whether you're involved in high-stakes business deals, international diplomacy, or everyday interpersonal disputes, getting to yes equips you with the tools to navigate negotiations with confidence and integrity. Its enduring relevance, nearly half a century after its first publication, attests to its transformative power in the realm of negotiation. The summary of Getting to Yes